There are two ways of thinking about the world. One focuses on all, same and forever. The other focuses on some, different and for a while. We can call these different ways of thinking symmetrical and asymmetrical. When we're dealing with many parts of our lives, we often, without any conscious thinking, favour the symmetrical way of understanding the world. We have to. We receive an enormous amount of data through our senses. If we tried to process each part of it as unique, we would be totally overwhelmed. But just as thinking about the world in an entirely asymmetrical way, treating each new experience we have as unique, would make living impossible, so too, dealing with the world in an entirely symmetrical way is not feasible. Some distinctions are important. If we're going to become an expert in any field, we need to know when to think symmetrically and make generalizations, and we need to know when to think asymmetrically and make distinctions. Either approach by itself simply isn't enough. We need both. Understanding the difference between symmetrical and asymmetrical thinking is important for the two tasks that are promised in the title of this book: delivering things and making impossible things possible. Our overall strategy for making impossible things possible is, taking our inspiration from Alan Kay and his promise of extra IQ points, to change our point of view, our way of seeing. Thinking about things in terms of symmetry and asymmetry is of course another way of seeing. And one of the ways of seeing Agile is as a way of injecting asymmetry into thinking about project management. Very often the reason that a project as described is impossible is because it is being thought about in a symmetrical way. For example, a refusal to prioritize a list of features and an insistence that everything is needed is subconscious, symmetrical thinking. But there's an asymmetrical approach to that same list. The list can be prioritized. The most important or high-value feature can be delivered first. Users can get to see working software early. Their reactions can be used to inform what's worked on next. Here, Agile approaches are being used to bring about a shift from symmetry to asymmetry. Something that is seemingly impossible is being turned into something possible. When we put working software in the hands of users, and when we do this early and often, we shift the focus of discussion away from arguments about a list of functions. Actually, most often the issue is a refusal to argue about a list and an insistence on wanting everything. But doing some of the work and putting it in the hands of some users encourages a more asymmetrical approach. What next? Is there something about this feature that needs enhancing? Now that users see this, is there another feature that's obviously the next step? Ongoing user research throughout the development shows that not everyone has the same point of view or the same values. It makes clear that to make a project a success, we may have to cater for points of views and values that aren't our own. User research simultaneously breaks the curse of knowledge, which is a recognized psychological bias. It also breaks another curse, one that doesn't need a special psychological term, and which we all suffer from, the curse of ignorance. Because of the way that symmetrical thinking deals with time, it's very difficult to imagine learning from a symmetrical point of view. But user research, especially when combined with testing of working software, enables learning about the knowledge and values of other people who might use our software. The combination of user research and working software also allows the discovery of new values. Understanding the difference between symmetrical and asymmetrical thinking, and everyone's natural tendency towards symmetrical thinking in unfamiliar situations, gives us a chance. The chance of turning undeliverable, impossible projects into deliverable, possible ones. One advantage of a lot of symmetrical thinking is that it happens in our subconscious. Conscious thinking requires energy and time. We simply don't have enough energy and time to carefully consider everything that comes to us via our senses. Generalizing allows us to pay very little attention to a lot of things that go on around us every day. It's an extremely efficient way of dealing with chairs that carry on being chairs and cats that keep on being cats. Symmetrical thinking allows us to forget what we are assuming is the same and focus on the things that we think or know are going to be different. There is no use in us being dismissive or critical of symmetrical thinking. Symmetrical thinking is a crucial part of the way we understand the world and a crucial part of how we decide to make it better. Daniel Kahneman discusses a representativeness heuristic. This is a rule of thumb that we use to quickly judge an entire group from a small sample. Perhaps just from this description you can see situations where this might go wrong. There is an evolutionary benefit to quickly assigning things to a class of things that we already know about. Of course, part of that benefit is that we don't have to spend time checking every member of a class. This is a huge time saver. Once we've been burned by fire, we don't need to check every flame. Once we've been attacked by one pack of wolves, probably only if we narrowly escaped, we know to avoid them. Symmetrical thinking is also behind the power and beneficial nature of universal ideas. In our field, we should understand that whatever project we're working on, symmetrical thinking was probably involved in getting it funded. The kind of ideas that get funded are symmetrical ideas, or at least they are partly symmetrical. From experience, it seems the ideas that get funded most often are the same but different ideas. But one of the things that we've listed as an advantage of symmetrical thinking is also one of its most powerful disadvantages. It happens in our subconscious. Silently, unconsciously, we've decided about something symmetrically before we even know it. The disadvantages of symmetrical thinking is the generalizations it makes can be too broad. To solve some problems, we need some asymmetrical thinking. It's no doubt healthy to have a fear of fire and to acquire the symmetrical idea that all fire is bad at an early age, or to be born with a fear of it. But the history of civilization might be thought to be the history of taming fire in multiple, particular and asymmetric ways. As a light to keep away the dark and scare off predators, as the cause of rocks turning into metals, and then as an explosion inside that block of metal to propel us along motorways and into space. We wouldn't have got very far if we'd stuck at fire is bad and needs to be avoided. Similarly, some genius managed to decide that not all wolves are dangerous and scary. Some of them can be made to chase sheep, but not to catch them. And some of them can be shrunk down so small that they can be carried in handbags. Mostly when we're thinking about symmetrical thinking, asymmetrical thinking and project management, we are dealing with the difficulties of symmetrical thinking which has happened unconsciously. And often that symmetrical thinking has subconsciously made the project either impossible or seemingly impossible. And as with the awesome steps forward with wolves and fire that were only made using asymmetric thinking, we can apply asymmetric thinking to project management in ways that make seemingly impossible projects possible and also allow the discovery of opportunities that no one could have imagined.